Today, we're going to explore how to become the best employee destination and how to attract, retain, and train A players. Welcome to Top Rated Gym, the podcast that helps ambitious gym owners build profitable and sustainable fitness businesses. I'm your host, Andre Cvijovic, and with every episode, we deliver actionable insights, expert advice, and success stories to help you grow your membership, streamline your operations, and achieve financial stability, even if you struggled with marketing challenges, operational overwhelm, or financial limitations in the past. Today, we have a special guest, Luke Carlson. He's the founder and the CEO of Discover Strength. Luke is known as a visionary leader in the fitness industry, building a business that generates more revenue per square foot than any other fitness concept. Discover Strength has 32 locations across North America, and Luke is highly sought after speaker presenting at events like HRSA, China Fit, and the Fitness Center Summit in Europe. Luke is a true practitioner, sharing insights from building a company with an industry-leading Net Promoter Score. He is not just a theorist, but someone who has scaled a massively successful fitness business. We are excited to dive into Luke's expertise in building an employee-centric culture and turning your staff into greatest asset. Luke, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Luke, last time we spoke, really, I was inspired with your view of how you look at a team and people as a greatest asset. But let's start with a question. How do you hire people like that? Let's start there. Where are they hiding?
I think it starts with a fundamental belief, a core belief that the who comes before the what. And that belief was instilled in me when I read Jim Collins' early work. So he writes Built to Last, and then a few years later, he writes Good to Great. And for those of your listeners who are not familiar with those books, were the outcomes of large research studies that he did with a number of research assistants, first at Stanford Business School and then just on his own. And Built to Last was a study of how come some companies are successful for 100 years, others are successful for 20 years, they flame out. They're in the same industry, same time period, same economic climate. Why do some prevail and some don't? And then he goes on to write Good to Great, and Good to Great is a study on how come some companies are mediocre for a period of time. They make a leap to becoming great, and then they can sustain that greatness, while other companies in the same climate don't make that leap. His biggest discovery, when he's asked after all this research, he said, what's the most important principle that you and your research team uncovered? He said, okay, that's a simple answer. It's the principle, first who, then what? And smart people heard him say this, and they said, okay, first who, then what? That means you got to have talent, and that means that people matter. And he said, no, that's not what it means. We've always known that talent matters. We've always known that people matter. What first who, then what means is the companies that placed a disproportionate emphasis on the who decisions. The who decisions always came before the what decisions. And what decisions are strategy, tactics, marketing, finance, technology, things that are really important, but they were of less importance than the who decisions. And the sequence was the key. It's first who. So the key word, it's first who, then what. Who decisions had to come before the what decisions. And many years later, the way he starts to articulate this, and your listeners have heard this before, is first we need to decide who do we need on this bus, get them the right seats. Then we decide where should we actually drive the bus. So fundamentally, I think to start this conversation, in my opinion, we have to believe in this philosophy, first who, then what, that we build great companies around people. If you fundamentally believe that, then you take your hiring process seriously. You take your onboarding process seriously. You think about compensation, rewarding, and recognizing mechanisms around that seriously. Your coaching, your development, all of that has or fits into a greater context of first who, then what. So I think when you fundamentally believe that, that sets the stage for how do we recruit and hire these people. And you may be perceiving that as, well, did you just go on a tangent there? Is that really the answer to the question? I think we have to start with that before we can talk about, well, how tactically are we actually hiring? And let me tell you, we've been around for 19 years. And I've been obsessed with this principle for 19 years. I can tell you 19 years ago, I gave the first two then what speech to all the candidates that were in on my very first job interview. I said, we have to take this interview process seriously because we're obsessed with this first two then what principle. I explained what the principle is. I said, we're not even open for business yet. We're going to build this company around first two then what. If that's the case, then we better take the job interview, this process, seriously. And that was my long-winded introduction that the job interview is going to be arduous. There's going to be 4 distinct interviews. That doesn't mean it's going to be slow, but it's going to be intentional. It's going to be arduous because if you care about identifying the right who, then your process better be arduous. It better be serious. It better be intentional. And I tell every candidate for 19 years, I say, if you ever get interviewed and the process is not arduous, you get hired and the process is not arduous, it's a pretty good sign that that firm does not put who before everything else. So, and maybe some of that sounds esoteric. We can get in. Do you want to get into the specific hiring processes? Is that where you want to go?
I believe the audience would love to know because you already started by emphasizing on psychology behind it. And I'm so glad you did. Because first of all, answer is great and it's long and I want it to be because if you don't dedicate time, focus, prioritization on this, it's not just go and replace me a trainer or just go and replace me somebody. There's no such a thing. This is as important as running smooth equipment or doing a payroll or freaking paying yourself. Unless you take care of something that's number one priority, and that's who is in the team, you will never be able to scale it to take it to the next level, and you will experience a lot of problems. So let's put it this way. Concentrate all the problems with them, bad employees that you had in the past as an effort up front, so you eliminate all those problems.
Yeah, I totally agree
And then
with
you
that.
save a lot more time and effort and frustrations and mistakes. So yeah, I would definitely love to go into details, but let's go a little bit forward and we'll come back. What are the key results and benefits of having a highly engaged, high performance employee base?
Yeah, the first one is if you're hiring the right people, you get to build the culture that you want to build. And we've heard this quote, we've heard paraphrases of this quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think strategy is incredibly important. I think culture is incredibly important, but we have to hire people into that culture. So when we're intentional about our hiring process, we're hiring the right people, that automatically is going to strengthen the culture. And then, so that's culture. And then there's engagement. Employee engagement is largely defined as an employee giving their discretionary effort. And that's what we want. We want each employee to give more discretionary effort. So a highly engaged workplace is where employees are giving discretionary effort. And I think wonderful hiring contributes to that. Hiring people to an intentional culture. There's no such thing as good or bad culture. That's the mistake that most leaders make. There's not a good or bad culture. The elements of culture, like our values, they are not, there's no evidence that says if you pick more virtuous values, then you're going to outperform the rest of the competition. But there is evidence that says if everybody in the organization or the highest percentage of people possible in an organization believe in the same values, which is the foundation of the culture, then that firm will outperform the rest of the competition. So getting the values right and making sure that we hire according to values is predictive of our long-term profitable growth. And then, like we said, this drives employee engagement, and I think ultimately has bottom line impact. I care about the bottom line impact. I also care about what people's work experiences are like, right? I love the Sigmund Freud quote. It is arguably my all-time favorite quote. He says, there are 2 cornerstones to our humanity, love and work. So he's saying there's love and work. So he says there's 2 things that really make us human. Love, which is beyond the scope of this podcast, right? I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And the second is work. And so to me, it is the leader's responsibility to create a work environment, to create a culture where people can be highly engaged and do meaningful, purpose-driven work, because that's going to comprise a huge percentage of our life. And according to Freud, it's probably half of what makes us a human being. So I think there's a greater calling than, hey, engagement leads to more productivity and therefore better bottom lines. Love that topic. Love driving top line and bottom line. But I also think as a human being, we are largely defined by the work that we engage in. And as a leader and manager, it's on our shoulders to build this culture and to build an organization where people can come and do purposeful work.
And when you talk about this, two organizations come to my mind. First is Steve Wynn, who created a most engaging experience in Las Vegas. He built a Las Vegas from Vint Hotel to Mirage to all of them. And his culture, employee culture, is such outstanding that no matter what economy happens, they never lose and they always have a wait line for the people to come in on board. But they have a culture of what you say is discretionary effort. They'll go way beyond their job requirement. They'll compete who's going to do more for the client. And every day they have huddle where primary topic of sharing is, what did you do for the client yesterday? Who has good news to share? And they brag and they look like hunters for the opportunity, how to exceed expectation, how to deliver experience that was not delivered before. All the way to the point when somebody says, oh my God, I forgot my pills. I got to go home. Look, where's your home? 6 hours drive. Employee will take off the rest of the shit, go drive 6 hours, come back tomorrow morning and deliver it on the pills. They will do magical. And another one is Elon Musk. We all ask ourselves, how the heck that person accomplished so much? Yes, he's a brilliant person, but employees in that organizations. And one recent interview, he said, I don't hire backgrounds or resumes or school degrees. I hire exceptional people. And exceptional means if you can prove that you did something extraordinary, you have a place. Otherwise, diploma, who cares?
Yeah,
and this is what I think where we need to go.
I love that. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And I think there's a statistic like 75% of employees, they are disengaged from the work. They're there to do minimum and they move on. If you can increase the level of engagement, and you started by this, the whole organization changes.
Yeah, agreed, totally.
We all can experience businesses where you will go into local business and you feel the owner is serving you. When the owner serves you, you feel 100% engagement. And you can see the drop on the managers, drop to the employees and so on. How can you get everybody to be fully immersed? That's the topic we want to really discuss. Luke, thank you for this. So now let's drive back. Now I wanted to start with why on this part. Like, why do you guys should think about this? Why should listen to this episode, give your employees, managers, hiring, HR, whatever admin there is to really digest deep. And if you don't mind, maybe we can go back to this tactical part of it, of nits and grits about hiring. Give us some parts of the process that you believe are the strongest.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you specifically what we do, and then I'm going to say the key components that I think every business needs to do, but you don't have to do it in the same way we're doing it. So we're doing 4 interviews. And I think one of the keys is that during your interview process, you have to hire around core values. Now, there's a lot of different ways that an organization can do that. I'm going to tell you specifically how we do it. You can't hire somebody and say, now that we've hired you, we want you to adopt our core values. We can't train you on the core values because core values are probably a part of your DNA already. So what we ultimately want to do during the hiring process is we want to find people who already believe what we believe around these core values, right? And core value by definition is the answer to the question, what do we believe? These are the things that we really want to build around. So in our first interview, we deliver what we would call the core value speech. So the first interview is a Zoom call. It's 30 minutes long. It's a group format. In the old days, it used to be around a conference room table, but over the last 5 years, we've realized, hey, Zoom works pretty good for this. I do a group interview personally. Like, I run all of our group interviews, and I've done this for 19 years. I do a group interview on average once every 14 days. I have one tonight. So I'll have about 10 candidates on the call tonight. And for 30 minutes, the first thing I'll do is I will talk about first who, then what. And then I'll talk about, here's our 4 core values. And I'll go through each one of them in detail. I'll talk about the behaviors, decisions, and actions around what living that core value looks like in our organization. Then when I'm done talking through that, I'll say, if you believe in what we believe, you should come work with us. If you don't believe in what we believe, then you shouldn't come work with us. The reason I'm sharing this with you now in your very first interview is we can save both of us a lot of time if you're not into this. And the leader has to be able to speak about the core values with enough sincerity, with enough candor that you're going to scare off the wrong candidate and you're going to draw in the right candidate. The mistake that most firms make is their core values are so polished that the terminology they use makes the core values sound like the same core value as every organization this candidate has ever interviewed with. So don't wordsmith or polish the core values where they become unrecognizable. Use your own language. And then you have to be able to speak to them, like I said, with enough detail, with enough nuance, where the employee understands, well, that's what I want to be a part of, that's what I believe in. Or the wrong employee says, I want nothing to do with that. So that's the first interview. The main focus is just explaining what are our core values, drawing the right people in, and really excluding the wrong people. Now, let me just give you some averages there, some percentages. So we'll do about 10 people in a group interview. Sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 8. About half of the people in that group interview decide to move on to the next step and half don't. We leave it up to them. So the second interview is a homework assignment. It's a 5-minute video that they create. They answer a few questions. So we send them directions and we just say, number 1, tell us how you've lived each one of the core values in your life. So they walk through that. Number 2 is tell us about how you're passionate about strength training, because that's all we do as a business. We want to hear their connection to strength training. Number 3, how are you going to help us become the best customer service company in the world? Because that's our obsession. And then the fourth question is, how do we know you're going to be at your best at 5:30 in the morning? Because our industry and our business involves being up serving clients early in the morning a lot of the times. And so we just want to hear that. Now, part of this is we need to hear the answers to those questions, but part of it is we want to see them complete a homework assignment, right? It's got to be 5 minutes long. If someone submits a video that's 7 minutes long, that is a knock against them, right? They just didn't follow directions. If they can't submit it on time, okay, this is a homework assignment. If we're getting an early indication whether or not they can actually follow directions. So that's number 2. Now, why is this so valuable? Our hiring team, so we have a team of 6 people that hire all of our exercise physiologists. They can watch these videos on their own time whenever they want to. Then they just give a thumbs up or thumbs down as to, are we moving forward with this person? Now, I said we have a hiring team of 6 people. It doesn't matter if it's just you hiring everybody, right? You can watch these videos on your own time in 5 minutes and decide, should I move this person forward? That's step 2 of the interview process. The third step is a traditional interview. So it's an hour long, and we're asking a million different questions. And let me just say, some of those questions are around core values, right? We're trying to uncover, again, whether or not someone is living the core values. Most of the questions are behavioral. So we'll say, tell us about a time when you fill in the blank, right? We love behavioral questions. So that's the third interview. It's a little bit more of a traditional interview format. Again, our hiring team is asking all those questions. It doesn't have to be the hiring team. In the old days, it was just me asking those questions. That's interview 3. Interview 4 is what we call the workout interview. So now you'll come into a facility and you work with one of our exercise physiologists, and all they're going to do is put you through a workout. And our brand of strength training is very high level of intensity strength training. So we move very slowly, meaning you lift a weight, you lower a weight slowly, you push to the point of muscle failure and beyond on every single exercise. It's 30 minutes of brutalizing somebody. So that is how we train. And so we want the candidate to experience that. We also want to see, can they follow directions? Are they tough? Like when the going gets tough and their back's against the wall, how they
So
going
they are a customer in this training, not a coach, not a trainer.
Exactly. Yeah, we want them to experience the workout. Exactly. And if by the end of that workout, if they're not excited about, wow, this is how we're going to do things, I learned so much just in the workout, that's a little bit of a red flag. So they're experiencing the product as a customer in that 4th interview. And then, of course, what we're really doing in that interview is the exercise physiologist that's administering the interview, they're understanding what this person looks like in the real world, right? When you come in for an interview or you're on a Zoom call and interview, you generally know, I'm in an interview, I'm on my best behavior. But when you're in for that workout and you're not working with a manager or the owner, depending on who's doing the interview process, you let your guard down a little bit and you show maybe your true self. And I love the example from Zappos, right? Zappos is the online shoe company based outside of Las Vegas. And when they would interview a candidate, the candidate flies into Las Vegas. And this could be for a senior management position, mid-level management position. And they have a bus, a shuttle bus that picks them up at the airport, brings them to the headquarters, and they start their day of interviewing. But the first thing they do is when the candidate gets dropped off at the headquarters, they ask the shuttle bus driver,
what was it like to interact with this person? And if they were a jerk to the shuttle bus driver, they tell the candidate right away, hey, the interview's over. And the candidate says, what? The interview didn't even start. No, it did. When you got off the plane and you got into the shuttle bus, the interview had started. We found out what you're like in the real world. And so this workout is a wonderful example of that. Now, they're still in our facility and they probably know that someone is paying attention to what they're doing, but we get to understand what are their mannerisms like and how do they show up. So that's our fourth interview. And at the end of that, we're going to check references and then we'll make a hiring decision based on that. And of course, in that first group interview, they get to decide if they want to go to the second interview. After the second interview, which is just the video submission, the 5-minute video submission, we get to decide if they're going to go on to the third interview. The third interview is the traditional 1-hour interview. We're going to decide who's going to move on from that to the workout interview. So clearly, we are cutting down the number of candidates throughout the process, so less candidates are actually getting to the workout interview.
Self-filtering system.
Exactly.
You're doing 4 steps. Guys, listen to this. If you already did on 1 or 2, you got to pause, pull over, or rewind this and listen again. And how I see your number 1 step is pretty much you're doing some kind of orientation where you are showing them what it feels to work with you. It's almost like you're giving them opportunity to interview you as a company. It's almost like, okay, this is what the company looks like. You're talking to the head of the company. You see where everything's coming from. If you don't like me, don't like my company, do not proceed further. It's giving them a chance because when you put yourself in the shoes of that same employee, that same A player, they need to choose as well. They're looking for you as you're looking for them. It's a win-win. It's like a double match. It has to match both sides. So if somebody's A player, they have no problem finding a job. They're more likely interviewing you than you're interviewing them. They're going to come up and say, is this company worth my time? Think about that. Because a regular guy who just got fired from another client, he will do pretty much everything. But those good guys will start looking after, is this good place for them? And that first part that you're doing, this 30 minutes with you being head of the company, staying there, that brings respect. And I was like, holy smoke. First of all, they have not seen the process like that before. And that drops down the number. I love the Zappos example or Amazon. When people go through the process, all steps, and they give them $2,000 check at the end. It was like, I want you to take a check, not to take the job. If you're here for a short term, please don't go further. If this is $2,000 going to help you, by all means, take it.
Yeah.
And that is the key point.
Yeah.
And then second, homework. Yeah, you might like it, but let's see if you're going to understand, because we're organization that have rules and expectations. And simple rule is 5 minutes. Tell me, demonstrate how you felt aligned or what you just heard of my core values. Tell me the story. And then you figure out if they understand the questions, if they understand the culture, if their vision of your culture maybe is wrongly interpreted. Maybe integrity in your side, that means different in their side. And it was like, okay, this guy got me. And do it on time. Maybe they'll ask clarifying questions. Maybe their communication is like almost let's start working before we start working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Whoa. And I just want to reinforce what you said is A players have options. And although I keep telling you the interview process is long and it's arduous, it's not supposed to be a hazing process, right? That is so outdated. During the interview process, we are courting the candidate. We are trying to win the candidate over as much as they're trying to win us over, but we have to be candid enough in that process where we scare off the wrong person, right? Like we want to be intentional about this is our culture, this is what we're going to do. If it's not right for you, then don't be here, right? But we are trying to court the right candidate. So it's multiple steps, but it can still be quick, right? Like we still will move through these steps quickly. What you don't want to do is between interviews, take 2 weeks. And take 4 days to respond to an email saying, I would like to move to the next step. So we want to be responsive because they're interviewing us as well. They're trying to understand, am I going to be treated with respect? Am I treated like a priority? Do people get back to me right away? Is the communication professional? Does everybody that I interact with in the organization value me as a human being? So we can show those things throughout that process. So we are.
Do you live by your own culture? If you say so,
exactly.
Do you do so? Right?
Exactly. Yep.
Whoa. And I believe, Luke, and correct me if I'm wrong, also interview process is a training. Because by the time you're interviewing in culture, they need to listen, they need to absorb, they need to answer the questions, because you don't tell them during the orientation, oh, I'm going to quiz you on this, write notes down. Did you naturally accept it? And it's a training. So the whole 4 steps are also part of the training that's invisible created without you having later on to do all this training, because they already got trained for cult culture. They trained for how it works on step number 4. I love the third one. Third one is more like theory. Now, let's go based on what you expect. Let me ask you questions directly. And this is like face to face. You can lie. Video, you can prepare it. You can re-record it. You can be your best.
Exactly.
And that shows me really that you got yourself. If people start recording on the cell phone while in the car, you see the environment, you saw it all. It's like immediate disqualification. You don't need 3 minutes, 5 minutes to watch. Sometimes 10 seconds, like no. And last one, and test is done by person who they never interacted with. Go to the local gym just to get a workout done.
Yep.
And you can see what kind of conversation they're carrying, what's happening in their role, right? Are they commenting the girls around, or they're respectful? Are they focused on the workout, or they're just chit-chat about something that's unusual? There's so much more to learn when you start playing the game. And let me work with you before I work with you. It's like almost like a test project for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard Branson did something similar in his documentary where he was a bus driver picking up people for Virgin. And then he was talking about some casual questions. How would you behave in this situation? People were joking and showing their real faces. And then later on, he took off the wig and the beard and was like, okay, guys, you too.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah.
You're done. So some invisible way to catch people at their right behavior, because everybody can carry the mask for a certain time.
Exactly. You want to see people truly be themselves. And so there's a number of different ways to do that. Patrick Lencioni, one of my favorite authors, he would say during the interview process, this is not practical, but it would be awesome if you could just hop on a plane and do a round trip flight, fly to a different city, get off the plane, get back on the plane and fly back. You spend a few hours sitting next to the person. You watch them interact with flight attendants. You watch them interact with gate agents. You watch them interact while they're waiting in a line. You just see them in the real world. Plus, you're sitting next to them for a few hours in the plane and can have conversation. Then you'd really be able to ascertain, is this the right fit for your culture? I don't think that's practical, but we can find practical ways to understand what's the true nature of this person.
Yeah. And they said sometimes waiting room is the place to evaluate people, what they're talking about. Yeah. When it comes to manager or leadership role, question came to my mind. Do you prefer promoting people within the company or hiring brand new person for that seat? Especially when it comes to...
What a wonderful question. So my first answer is, I think all of my mentors and all of the books that I've read and the authors that I've been influenced by and the organizational leaders that I put on a pedestal have focused so much on hiring internally. So develop people internally and promote from within. And the terminology for that is homegrown cultures. And I love the idea of a homegrown culture. But I also realize if you're trying to grow an organization, I think it's imperative that you bring in people into that organization at leadership levels who have done things that you haven't done. They've been where you haven't been. So we need to bring in some functional area expertise of a firm that is larger than ours in order for us to stimulate growth. So my thinking on this currently over the last 20 years, it's shifted, is it's got to be a balance of both. Have to have internal people continue to get promoted and move into leadership positions. So we have to have development structures in place where we're developing them as leaders and managers. And then we have to be willing to hire from the outside as well, because by upgrading your senior leaders, by upgrading your leadership as a whole, I think that's how a firm really grows. So it has to be both. And I get excited about both. I love developing our internal people to become future leaders. We're interviewing shortly here, recruiting and interviewing for a senior level position. And I haven't interviewed for a senior level position in many years, and I'm really excited about the process because we're going to hire someone who's been where we haven't been and accomplished things we haven't accomplished, and they're going to help us get better. And the idea is, if I have to mentor every one of our senior leaders around their functional area, we're not going to grow, right? Because functionally, I don't know that much about finance and marketing and sales and operations. I know enough to get us to where we're at, but we want to continue to grow. And in order for us to grow, we need to bring on leaders that have functional area expertise that far exceeds mine. And I keep saying mine, but for the owners and the operators, the managers that are listening, you got to bring people onto your teams that are more talented, more experienced, smarter than you are. And I have no ego, so I love doing that. And I love learning from those people, providing a culture where they can thrive.
Yeah, hire where your strengths are not present. So, for example, in my company, being an entrepreneur, you're originally rule breaker. You're looking for the ways how to grow. You're looking for your hacks and originations of the processes. But as you grow, process and rules becomes necessity. So me, who is always capable of figuring out things in a chaos and find the best solution on time right away, it's great when the company is small. But if it grows higher, you got to prevent and avoid those things and be proactive. And when I brought my chief operating officer, oh my God, like everything changed. We created in 1 year more SOPs than in the last 10 years. We structure everything. Every meeting is a SOP creation or update or evaluation. It's like whole world. I don't think I'm capable of doing that part of job. And if I didn't accept your second role, bring the expertise, my company will be limited by my time capacity to learn things, to teach somebody else because they want to grow.
Yeah.
Happens in the product as well, happens in operations. Like, guys, find your weaknesses. And if you're good in something, maybe you can train people because it's natural to you. But if you're not, boom, get out of the way because the leader becomes bottleneck and you don't
Totally
want to
agree
be.
with you. Totally agree.
Love that, man. Oof. So now we hired a person. We went through the process. We get a culture. By the way, we didn't talk about culture here and your core values. Get your homework done there. There's so many resources, books about that. EOS, what the heck is EOS, or Traction, or many others. Culture, culture, culture. You got to read them down. You got to breathe it, talked about it, write it down everywhere in the business, outside business, in all documentation. Mission, vision, culture is a core. We assume you have that. And then you start hiring. And let's say you hired a person. Look, what's the next step? Person went through all those points. Do you accept orange flags? If somebody has fly green colors and one of them has something red, would you accept that person or is black and white?
We have this saying, and we think we're really scientific and really dialed in on our approach to interviewing. But let me tell you, when I talk to leaders of larger firms, much larger than mine, they say we can do all of our homework and we can go through a wonderful process and we still make mistakes and hire the wrong person. So let me just say one of our best practices is, now let me just say, if we're hiring an exercise physiologist, our last two questions that we ask is, do we see this person becoming one of the top 5 exercise physiologists in our entire company? And if the answer is no, we're not going to hire them. And the reason we ask that question is we need to constantly upgrade our talent. If the framing question is, do we see this person being a successful exercise physiologist at our company, then it's easier to say yes. But as soon as we say, are they going to be the top 5 in the organization? We say, nope, I can't see it. We can't hire them. We need to upgrade our talent constantly. So I love that framing question after you've asked all the questions and your team, whether it's you and one other person or a hiring team, when you're having the discussions, I love that framing question. And the last framing question is, and this really gets to your point, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. So if we have any hesitations, if there's any of these red or orange flags, then we shouldn't move forward. And we have enough interviewing experience where we know what those red flags look like, were the things that we're just not going to tolerate. I think every organization is different as far as that goes, but we know enough to say, no, we're not going to go there because that just never ends well. On paper, so many things look good, but there's this one issue that we just know 6 months down the road, we're going to have a problem. So we avoid that problem and don't move forward. So to your question, yeah, if there's an orange flag, we're going to heed it up front and not move forward with that person.
And I love the approaches, and my mind resonates. The tougher you make it, the more attractive it becomes. See, NBA players, it's hard to get into NBA league. There's tons of basketball players out there. And I know it's a holy grail of basketball to get to play on that national league. And A players want to play with A players that are better than themselves. They want to be part of the league that's unreachable. And they know they'll lift up their standards. Recently, I read the book from the personal trainer of Michael Jordan, Relentless. It's a freaking awesome book. But it says that Michael was making other players much better. So when they got bought by Chicago Bulls into other teams, their games dropped tremendously. Because Michael was saying, either you play at the highest level as I do, or you're out. And people knew if they want to be on that court, they got to put all out. There's no walking on the court, there's sprinting on the court. If I see you just jogging, you're out the second I see you. So people know it's a standard of expectation lifts up more than you usually demonstrate. And another example is Marines. The Marine elite of the US Army, the sad situation is when they leave Marine role and they retire, their standards drops. They become fat, their habit and disciplines drops because it's surrounding that held them at the highest standards. There was no shoulds around them. It was all must. And we all do based on the other expectations of other people around us. So when you're surrounded with A players, it's no, you will be your best. And when they see the gates coming up after you, there's like first interview, second, third, fourth, it was like, oh my God, this is NBA world of the strength training. I want to be part of it. And A players don't bend on the rejections, no matter what. You give them a rejection, you give them a challenge, they accept it as something to go through, and they push through. Okay, you will interview me, I'll show you what I'm made of. Bring on the game.
Yeah.
So don't think, for the listeners now who are listening, that making too many steps and too hard process, you will reject A players. I think it's opposite.
You'll attract them. Yeah.
Once you get into the game,
you're setting the tone right away that you take people seriously. So that's the first two. Then what? You take people seriously, you're taking them seriously, but you're taking the company serious, right? Like when Discover Strength started, like we started 19 years ago, I said, we're going to take fitness, we're going to take strength training as seriously as McDonald's takes hamburgers and Microsoft takes software and Ford takes automobiles. We're going to get way more serious about this. And I would go to industry conferences and hear people say things like, no one gets into fitness to make money. They get into fitness because it's a passion, et cetera. And I thought to myself, that is not true. That's called the tyranny of the or, meaning you can either do something you're passionate about that has real purpose and value to the consumer, or you can make money. No, like we want to embrace the genius of the and. We can make money and do purposeful work. We can make money and do work that's altruistically valuable to the customer at the end of the day that changes lives, et cetera. We don't have to choose. So by taking ourselves more seriously, that candidate says, I take myself seriously. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to be a part of. And I think that attracts, you can call it an A player. I'm just going to say it attracts the right person in the organization. And for the entrepreneurs, small business owners that are listening, really, we have to take our businesses pretty seriously for our people to take our businesses seriously. They have to see a wonderful life and job and career. They need to see our vision for what we're building has to be big enough where the vision for what they want can live within that vision, right? We just have to expand, I think, our vision a little bit. And in this case, that sounds esoteric, but that just means take the interview process seriously because you're taking the organization serious. And then you asked earlier, you said, what do you do after the hiring process? And I think this has to be one of the big focuses of our conversation is when the hiring process is done, the next incredibly important step, and I think this is an area where most firms in our industry, but every industry struggles with, is the onboarding process. And is it okay if I give a tactical recommendation on what this looks like? There's so many different things we can do here, but the one that I think is the most important is what we would call day one. And day one, as you can imagine, is the first day of employment for that employee. We do our day one 10 times a year, so almost every month. All of our employees start on the same day. So by the way, when you're going through the hiring process, we let them know, as you and I record this right now, it's January 2nd. We let them know, hey, we're going through this process right now. Our day one is going to be February 7th. So everything builds toward February 7th. They know that's when their start date would be. So on that day, we will have between 2 and 8 employees starting on the same day. They go through day one together. And I got all of this from Horst Schulze, who is the longtime president of the Ritz Carlton Hotel Company. And this is what they did. They did day one and they onboarded everybody at the same time. And his advice was on day one, you have to create a significant emotional experience. All the research says that people are more interested in leaning into values and purpose and some of these things that sound esoteric on the first day. Literally by the second day, their interest and their ability to absorb and connect with those things already starts to diminish. So on that first day, we have to talk about values. We have to talk about purpose. We have to talk about where we're going long term. So be intentional about that very first day. What you don't want to do is they come in and you say, okay, so-and-so is here. They're going to show you around. They show you around, eventually show you to your cube and say, your computer is supposed to be here. IT doesn't quite have it ready. They'll have it ready in an hour. So-and-so from this department is going to stop by and grab you for lunch and have lunch with you today. And you're going to get some HR training later. Good luck. That's not a great first day. So that day one experience has to connect to values and purpose and talk about not just where the organization is going, but a wonderful thing to do. And this is how we start our day ones is we ask the candidate where they're going. So the question we ask them, it's called the R factor question, and R stands for relationship. So we get all around a table. This is the very first thing we do. We're sitting down together, and I've shown them the agenda for the day. The first thing we do is the R factor question. The R factor question is this: we're sitting together 1 year from today. What has to have happened for you, both personally and professionally, so that when you look back at this 1 year, you feel like you've made great progress and you really love where you're at? So I have them write out the answer to that. All the things personally that they want. Okay, I'm going to get a dog. I'm going to propose to my significant other. I'm going to buy my first house. I'm going to move out of my parents and get an apartment, whatever it is. Okay, and then all the things professionally they want to accomplish. The reason we're asking those questions is we're about to go on a journey together, and we need to understand, well, where do you see this going in the next year? And of course, you can put any time duration on it that you want. I think 1 year is the appropriate time frame. We hire a lot of 22-year-olds right out of college. We generally don't like to ask 3 years down the road. It's just harder to picture that. But 1 year down the road, we want them thinking about what their year is going to look like and articulating it to us. So what are we really doing there early on? We are making them the hero of the story, like the brand, the company, me. I am not the hero of the story. Okay. We're going to serve as a guide. We're going to help them achieve what they want to achieve, but they're the hero of the story of their lives. And so the very first thing we have to do is, where are you going over the next year? They write it down, then we write it down. They share it out loud. We write it down. We capture all of it. Then we get into the rest of our day. Now, of course, at lunch, we have our whole senior leadership team come in for lunch, and we just connect with them over that lunch. And we ask them questions about, where did you grow up? And tell us about your family. And what sports did you play? Activities were you in high school or college? Always ask, what's your favorite movie, right? So we just have some, not work conversation, just get to know them as a human being. So now they know who our senior leaders are right away, okay? Then, and that first day, they'll do a workout, right? And your first day of employment, you should have a workout. So they change their clothes out of their professional attire and get into workout clothes, and they do a workout with an experienced exercise physiologist, and that should be a really special workout, the workout you had on your very first day of employment. So we spend the full day together. We start at about 8 o'clock. We wrap up by 4 o'clock. And I am really the leader of that day. So that also demonstrates to them that I'm approachable. They're not an interruption in my day. They're the reason for the company existing. And so I want to spend that entire day with them. So now it works for me because we just do it 10 times in a year, and I can, on my calendar ahead of time, plan those 10 days and spend the full day with them. So we are never hiring like urgently, because we're not going to interview someone and say, can you start like tomorrow or first thing next week? We always have these in the calendar ahead of time, and we're going to onboard them accordingly. Now, onboard means more than just the day one, but you got to nail the day one. When we're done with day one, we turn them over to our education team, and they go through 2 weeks of technical onboarding before they ever work with a client. And that's everything from exercise to the history of the company to how we deliver customer service, all of it. But that day one is the key. They day one with me, then they go into everything else.
So, question, you are hiring for different roles in the same event. And then
Correct.
Pretty much culture, leadership, everything is same. You want to unify people before they start learning their own departmental things.
Yeah, and at day one, you have people with all different roles, but we're talking about purpose and values and what's our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal, and what's the vivid description of our future. So all the things that are germane to everybody in the organization is covered in day one.
I'll tell 2 things what I came out from here. First, I put myself as one of these prospects. And let's change the hats. Let's think how this looks like from them. They come in, they told the wife or family, I'm looking for the job. I went for 4 interviews. Tomorrow is my day one. I'm going there. They did their best. They dressed up, shaved, boom. They're just thinking about that. They also think, oh my God, this is a real deal. Interview is one thing. I got to figure out what is going on here. And everybody's in anticipation. their family's anticipation, their friends. This company, this day will be topic of discussion for next 7 days when they meet everybody, even a neighbor when they talk or walk a dog in the neighborhood. So what are they gonna tell other people? How was your first day? Really depends on how you create that experience. And if you bombard them with theory and SOPs on a day one, they'll come home burning with the head like, whoa, this was overwhelming. I don't know what's going to happen. But no, you went. There's something in persuasion called ask, don't tell. If you tell them, oh, a year from now, you'll have a fantastic life. Your life will change on personal, professional level. It's thank you. You don't know my life. But you ask them, what is a life for you in a year? Let them come to their mind. That's the truth. That's their vision board. That's their vision board. That's their goal. Now they have their vision board that everybody's different to say, I'm going after that. And they're seeing picture like this job will get me there. What's in it for me? That will whiff them. Big what's in it for me. So they're coming home and of course work out. Pump up the dopamine before they go home. Boom, sweat out, get their workout, but they're used to it. Oh, I didn't even miss the workout. Well, what the company? I can work out while I'm working on the first day. They come home, they're pumped. Now their wife feels supported, their family, mother, father, whatever is there, friends, lucky you. How the heck did you find them? They feel like winners, they got a job, and winners because they choose well. For them, they're the heroes. They won. They're profiting from the whole experience, thinking like, I made the right call. That's the feeling you want to deliver. Am I on the right track here, Luke?
Yeah, amen. Amen. Everything you said, I agree with completely. And we always talk about we want to deliver experiences to customers in any business where they're more likely to refer. So we want to deliver a remarkable experience, and remarkable means they are willing to remark about it. The experience is worthy of earning a remark. And that's how we get word of mouth business. Well, we want the same thing from our employment experience, right? So to summarize everything you said, we want someone to leave that day one and talk positively about the experience they've had with the brand. Absolutely.
Whoa. And a CEO meeting you on the first day, it's just how many companies can say that? How many of their friends can say the same thing? And then becomes a drive. Now they're not there to do the job, pay the bill. They're there to grow, to explore, to become more. It's a mission, it's alignment, it's a woohoo moment, it's a wiping out because they're comparing this job with any other crappy job they had before. Because if they used to have good jobs, they wouldn't be on the market. And the day one is comparing with every other day one they had before.
Yeah, exactly.
So significant step. And I hope you guys who are listening to this thinking like, oh, what is your day one? Damn. Thinking who should be doing this? Put yourself in a seat of leadership because you're a leader and you need to lead, not push from the back behind. Be the leader of the army that's on the front lines, not the one sitting in the back and thinking like, how the heck my war will win.
And a lot of times we think about scale and we think about like it'd be easy to take everything that we just talked about and say we could turn this into a video or a series of videos. We could put it in our learning management system. And to me, then you've missed the point, right? There's a lot that we can put into a learning management system, and there's plenty of videos that our employees watch. They're going to watch hundreds of videos and take tests via the learning management system. But that first day, it needs to be a human being in front of them, because if I have them watch a video that's they sit in a conference room and watch a video that says, I'm Luke Carlson, I'm the CEO of Discover Strength, and we value you so much, and we're all about first who, then what. They're thinking, bullshit. If it was first who, then what, you would be here with me, and you're on a screen instead. So sometimes I think leaders jump to, is that scalable too often? And when I hear from Horst Schulze of the Ritz-Carlton say, no, like I did it throughout the entire time I led the Ritz-Carlton for over 2 decades, I realized, okay, it is scalable. And so when we think about what's scalable and what's not, you have to decide, when do you, as the human leader, need to be there with your people? And I think this is strategic choices.
Works both ways. Look, what I learned from Elon is his hiring process is not only to hire, it's to learn. When you hire somebody smarter than you in a certain role, would you let that to HR manager or executive, or would you like to be the one who finds the answer to a problem you couldn't solve before?
Yeah.
For him, he would offer a tremendous salary as a bonus for somebody to come, and he would interview people about proposal system that goes into vacuum, sustain the pressure, whatever. He didn't know the answer for that. It was like, okay, tell me how we would solve the problem. And that's the problem his engineers cannot solve now. You solve the problem, you get a job. And I learned something. So it's learning experience for you. Everybody should be hiring all the time without even hiring. outcome just to learn. And then when you find somebody who is this person top 5 on the whole organization in a year, then you find a place for them because you have somebody probably in your organization who can be replaced with one of the people who are such amazing as a one that you rarely find.
Yeah, agreed.
I love that. So now this is fantastic. First day goes through, then training and onboarding. How long is the onboarding? You said 2 weeks of technical onboarding.
Yeah, 2 weeks of technical onboarding, and it's a combination of they're working with our education team. So that's our people that are actually
It's just the learning. They're still not bringing productivity.
Yeah, exactly. And then that includes learning management system. So they're watching videos and taking tests also. And then they're also they have the massive operations manual where they're paging through that. And then they're going onto the exercise floor. And we have what we call essentials training is what we start off with on the floor, right? And then they go through all these modules on the floor. So 2 weeks, that's when they get ready to test out and actually work with a client after 2 weeks. And again, like I said, that's how we do it. But the focus is have a really special, intentional day one, and then invest in that onboarding, because to me, you can't build a strong brand unless you really invest in training your people. And I don't care if it's the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons or Nordstrom, we need training and development before we put people live with our customer. And for us, 2 weeks is appropriate. It is 2 weeks, all in, really developing this person. And at the end of those,
understanding you already got somebody who is well qualified, trained, and
exactly.
And
yeah. So we hired a really good person, and then 2 weeks of training and development, and we're still I don't know, this person's pretty green. We don't know if they're fully ready, and that's after investing 80 hours in their development, getting them ready to go. And I can't imagine having them to go live with our customer and delivering our brand experience if we hadn't provided that much training and development. So, and I said, we're hiring an A player already. So it's
and this is not just a gym industry. I want to say that every incredible industry, one of my employee used to work in airline companies, and then her last job was in Qatar airline, one of the best, most expensive, lucrative, luxury travel. And of course, she had experience coming in. And then for 2 months, she trained in the plane, doing simulations of everything that would happen. To the moment when you get the micro experiences that might never happen, it's almost like I'm pushing my cart, serving the people around it. And if my colleague is making faster progress, she needs to stop and pull, because people will feel they're being served behind every little detail. And then when she goes to the work, checking in the plane, there's a tablet there and quiz questions. You got to answer the questions every freaking time you start the day, because you don't want to forget it. Imagine how, you pass the test to come to work, but every day there's a different questions to make sure you don't forget it. And that's how you consistently keep the experience. You can deliver it once, but you got to consistently up the game and keep it at the highest level. Now, all this can be awesome. Look, but still, like you said, there are people who needs to be let go. It's not maybe because of them. Maybe they get divorced and their life becomes a vortex. Maybe they lost somebody. Maybe there's something that affected their life and suddenly things change. Or maybe they somehow were a great actor during the onboarding and sales process, and you need to let them go. I believe as important it is to hire is to let go people or do something with them. So what do you do when you recognize there is a person who is not fit anymore?
Yeah, and first of all, we have to lean into the idea that that's the role of the leader and manager, right? The best way to retain A players is to get rid of someone who's a B or C player, because A players want to work with other A players. So we generally don't get rid of the C player because we think we're being nice or kind by keeping them. All we're doing is driving away the A players in our organization because they just don't want to be around C and B players. So as uncomfortable as it is to get rid of that person, we need to do it for the other A players. So that's, I think, a philosophical starting point. And then, of course, to grow, it's no different than a tree or a plant of any kind. We have to prune, right? We have to prune in order to create more growth. And it doesn't mean you have to water more. It doesn't mean you need different soil to grow. You just need to prune. You need to get rid of what's not working. And it doesn't mean the person is a bad person. It just means they're not the right person in the right seat. And that's fine. And so what we want to do is we want to open them up to the rest of the marketplace. They're going to be happier. They're going to thrive in a different organization, not in yours. And I think a couple of the key takeaways here is we want to hire slow, like we said, but we want to fire fast. Okay. One of my favorite questions I love interacting with leaders and managers and executives all kind. And one of my favorite discussion topics is people that have run organizations of all different sizes for literally decades and their entire life. No one ever says, I got rid of that person too soon. The mistake that the manager makes, they always say, biggest mistake I made in my career is I held on to people too long. And by too long, it's 2 weeks, it's 2 months, it's 2 years, sometimes it's 8 years. And a great little pithy line here is, again, we're talking about hire slow, fire fast, is once someone shows you who they are, okay, who they really are, believe them the first time, right? Don't make them prove it over and over. Now, I believe in performance improvement plans and we can coach and develop, but at some point we have to make the decision that this person would be better suited somewhere else. And we're doing that to protect our own culture and to protect our own A players. And of course, we should terminate an employment in an incredibly respectful way. And if it's appropriate, we believe in treating that former employee like an alumni. And if they're resigning, we want to treat them like an alumni at a university or a college, right? So we want to give them ongoing discounted training at Discover Strength. And we want to give them a newsletter that's specifically for alumni. We want to make them understand that they're a critical part of our culture. Now, that's more germane to people that have resigned rather than people that have been fired. We really want to treat those people like they're alumni. So we want to do it respectfully. But the main reason, this is a key take home, the main reason that the manager generally doesn't fire someone is not because of anything to do with the person. It's because of ourselves. It's a selfish decision not to let someone go. Now, what is that selfish decision? It doesn't feel good. I want you to like me. I don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation with you and have you dislike me and have your family dislike me. So out of my own selfish interest, I don't fire you. Right? Really, what I should be doing is I should be letting you go so you can move on to an environment that's better suited for you. And then, of course, you're going to strengthen your own culture, your own organization. You're going to retain your A players. Your A players want you to make sure that you are constantly pruning, and we can prune in a loving way, right? We can prune in a respectful way.
And I will add to that. I love that. In my organization, currently counting 60 plus people, we never fire people. We call it liberate. Because if they're not happy, they're not performing, think from their side. They might feel comfortable with the income. You're a great organization who supports them, but are they really doing the best thing in their life they could? Are they really fulfilled? Are they really engaged? Do they really enjoy it? And you know they could, it's just they don't. And for you not liberating them, you're punishing them from their happiness and future fulfillment. Because there is a place for everybody where everybody thrives. The fact that this is an organization that holds their position, I think you're doing them in disfavor. And I've seen that. You can help them out. There's companies who share the SOPs. Hey, here's the 5 things you could do. You can give them reference letters. You can really help them out on the way out. It doesn't have to be ruthless because it's going to fight back. But doing it in such a way that they feel like, oh my God, I feel good now. I feel better now. I feel that this is the right way to do it. It's almost like taking off the CEO hat or manager hat and going as a friend's hat. What the heck are you doing here, buddy? You're not performing. You're not growing. You're making mistakes. You're not enjoying the job. You're not fulfilled. You're not making progress. Everybody around you does. Don't you think there's a better place for you? And that's how you can be great in hiring, but you can also be great in liberating.
Yeah.
And they feel it's their decision again, not just yours to fire them.
Yeah, perfectly stated.
Wow. So I love this. Man, time flies. And I got to tell that we exceeded the time allocated for this. And we can talk about this for a long time. I have a couple quiz questions, fast questions. Just put me whatever first comes on your mind. You already mentioned Jim Collins, Good to Great, and Built to Last. Awesome companies. Is there any other companies or books, resources, conferences, podcasts that you would recommend that people go to learn things?
The one book that I think is really powerful is Patrick Lencioni. The book is called The Truth About Employee Engagement. It's written as a fable. It is one of the best business books ever written, and it really speaks to how do we drive employee engagement. It is an awesome book. So The Truth About Employee Engagement by Patrick Lencioni, I think, is a must read. One of my favorite podcasts is Alex Hormozy, and his podcast is The Game. And I used to hate Alex Hormozy because he had way bigger biceps than me, and he was really bright. And I wasn't sure if he was a charlatan. Now I love Alex Hormozy. I was at their corporate office a couple months ago, and I just listen to everything that he says. I think he's pretty great. Those are two go-tos for me. Now, I love to read, so I've read a million books, love to read books nonstop, and I love to listen to a million podcasts. But when someone asks me for a recommendation, I just can't stand it when someone lists 20. So I would start with that book, and I would start with that podcast.
There we go. I love that. I did not read Patrick Lencioni. Thank you. I'll take that as a personal recommendation as well. I'm a more of a listening guy, audiobooks guy. I just exceeded my 205 audiobooks, and some of them I listened 4 or 5 times. It's crazy. But yes, Alex Hormozy, the Game podcast, Gym Launch, all $100 million leads, $100 million offer, all of them read through it. Get my team on it as well. Incredible guy. I agree. And audience now really curious about you. Many of them already know you from the speaking conferences, podcast, and pretty much every digital stage you attend. But also for those who don't, how can they find more information about you? There are people there looking for another employment opportunity, partnership, joining your franchise, leaders, or somebody who wants to invest in your business or maybe become franchisee. How can people find more about you?
Yeah, probably 3 ways. DiscoverStrength.com. DiscoverStrengthFranchise.com, which is clearly someone interested in a franchise opportunity. And then they can follow me on Instagram, as where I'm, I think, the most active, and that's Luke Carlson 3070 on Instagram. And of course, I'm pretty good on email too. So if someone wants to email me, my email's very available.
Awesome. Look, you're a gift for this community. You're the gift for the fitness world because of people like you. This community thrives and grows, and it's inspiration for me to listen to you, to talk to you. It's my privilege to have you on the podcast here. And for you guys who are listening, the way you express thank you for this time spent with Luke is to really share this episode with everybody you know. People and employees, because this is education also for employees who are looking for the workouts and gyms and places to work. Says, hey, what is the best place? How the greatest organization think? Share with your colleagues, share with your executives, and share with other people who are in the fitness world or those who are really care about making this a better place for everybody. Luke, on the behalf of the community, thank you for being a guest today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If you are a gym owner looking to become a top-rated gym in your area, visit topratedgym.com and grab our free 30-day reputation boost. That's topratedgym.com. I'll add it to the show notes for you. Don't forget to share this with your friends. Stay strong, stay motivated, and keep pushing your gym to the top. Until next time, this is Andre signing off.